Hi and welcome to Easy Cooking for Students. Today I'm going to be making what I like to call the ultimate Valentine's Day cake. So the reason I call it this is because this cake has a whole lot of pink on it. It's got chocolate layers inside with a marble heart. It's got chocolate decorations. It's just such a great treat for anyone at all. It's a little bit tricky to make, but you will definitely have a lot of fun making it. I sure did. So let's have a look how to get started. First of all, we're going to be making the marble heart that goes inside both the layers of the cake. So over here I'm sifting 1¼ cup of flour, and I'm just using plain flour, but you can use whatever you've got. To that I'm adding 1 teaspoon of baking powder and then half a teaspoon of baking soda. And just make sure you've mixed that really well so there are no lumps anywhere. Over here in a separate bowl I'm adding half a cup of milk. To that I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of oil, and then half a cup of sweetened condensed milk. And because I'm using sweetened condensed milk, I won't actually be using any sugar. And I definitely enjoyed this method a lot because my cake came out very soft and not overly sweet. So that was a huge bonus for me because that's the way I like my cakes. So over here I'm adding the wet ingredients to the dry ingredients, and I'm just going to add a little bit at a time until I get a nice and smooth cake batter. So over here I'm adding in about a teaspoon of vanilla essence, but you can add in however much you like. I definitely like my cakes with a strong vanilla flavor, so I normally find 1 teaspoon is good for me. Okay, once that's done, I'm going to separate an even amount of the mixture across 5 bowls. So I've got 5 because I'm going to be using 5 different colors, but you can separate it into however many colors that you have. I'm going to be putting in quite a bit of color just because I want the colors to be bright and strong. So if you want your colors to be quite light, if you want the shades to come out light, then you should add a little less than what I've done. Once all that's done, we're going to be filling each color into a Ziploc bag, and I must say you will definitely be using a lot of Ziploc bags throughout this recipe. I just find it a lot easier because you can throw them out later, and they're quite cheap as well, so it's definitely easier than having so many icing bags, which I definitely don't have. So for me this technique is very useful. All my colors have been put into Ziploc bags, and I'm just going to spray my cake tin with oil. I didn't actually think to pull a lot of air out of it before I close the Ziploc bag, so you should definitely do that because I found that I didn't push enough air out, and then I pressed on it too hard so the bag ripped straight away. So from that mistake I can definitely tell you, go really slowly because you don't want these bags to rip. Add in random squiggles, make random shapes, whatever you want, and then go ahead and put in all the different colors. And if you have a lot of a single color, then you can leave some for later and then go back and put that in on top, so you get a whole different marble look, and it's quite nice. So over here I'm adding my pink, and as you can see now I've decided to slow down, and I pushed all the air out of it at the start, which is what you want to do, and I didn't do that for the blue, so you definitely should do that. And just try and go everywhere just so you get the cake batter mixed throughout the cake tin and not just in one spot. As you can see, I've gone through all the colors and I had some red left over, so I'm just going back and putting that over it. Once that's done, just make sure you hit the tray on the table a good number of times so you can get as much air out as you can, and also to make sure that the batter is even throughout the tray. Put that into the oven at 180 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes. Okay, so now we're going to start the second part, which is making the chocolate cake layers. So over here in a bowl, I've already got 1.5 cups of flour, and to that I'm adding 1 teaspoon of baking powder and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So I'm just sifting all of those dry ingredients through. Now to that I'm adding half a cup of cocoa powder, but you can add more if you want it stronger. I just felt like this much is definitely enough for me. And make sure you go and mix that in just like in our first step, because you don't want any lumps and you want everything to be blended in nicely. Here in a separate bowl I'm adding half a cup of oil, half a cup of the sweetened condensed milk, and to that I'm adding some vanilla essence, and I'm just going to mix that together. So I've just added a little bit into the dry ingredients at a time because you don't want any lumps, and then I'm going to be adding in about half a cup of milk a little bit at a time again, just so I can get it to the smooth consistency that I wanted. Okay, so here I've got my half cup of milk, and I'm just going to add that in until I get a nice and smooth consistency. Okay, so I bought these very small round cake tins, and I felt like that was a good size to take on my little Valentine's date. So I'm only adding about 2 scoops of the cake, the chocolate batter into these small little cake tins, because I just want to make a base to start off with, so I have somewhere to put my rainbow hearts. Once you've put in about 2 big scoops, just fill the bottom in slightly. I'm going to put that into the oven at 180 degrees Celsius for only 10 minutes. I don't want to completely cook it all just yet. In this part we're going to be making the hearts that go inside each of the layers. So once your rainbow cake batter has cooked, just let it cool down and take it out of the tray. So this part took me a very long time to do. It almost took a whole hour because I actually cut each individual heart out by hand. So if you have a heart-shaped cookie cutter, you'll definitely finish this in no time at all. And so here I am just cutting out the shape of a heart, which actually took a lot of time. So here I'm just putting it against my bottom base layer that I put in previously. I'm just trying to see how big to make my heart because I don't want it to be taller than the cake tin. So now I'm taking some chocolate batter and I'm just putting it into a bit of a donut shape. I've got my hearts. As you can see, they're all not completely identical because I did cut them all by hand, but then you just put them upside down and put it right into the middle just so the top parts of the heart can sit against the chocolate layer that you just put on right now, and that way you don't have any gaps in there when you actually put the rest of the batter through. So if your hearts are actually the same size, that would be really helpful, because then when you cut through it, you'd actually have the same sized hearts going through all your slices. But for me, because I did cut them all by hand, it didn't exactly turn out like that. Just cover it up with more of your chocolate batter and do the same thing with the second layer, and then you want to bake it at 180 degrees Celsius for about 30 minutes. While our cake layers are baking, I'm going to start making our chocolate decorations. So for this, basically I'm just using a plain block of dairy milk chocolate, and I'm going to break it up into little cubes, put it into a microwave safe bowl, and then heat it for about 20 seconds. Then I'm just going to mix it again, and I'm just going to continuously put it in for 10 seconds until the chocolate has melted and become a nice flowy consistency. Just don't put it in at a high temperature all at once. Make sure you do it in little bursts of 20 and 10 seconds, just so the chocolate doesn't burn. There it is, melted quite a bit, so I'm just going to mix it a little bit and then put it in for another probably 10 seconds and mix it again. There you go, happy with that consistency. So I'm just going to fill my chocolate into another Ziploc bag. Now, I did find that my chocolate was very runny, and I made the cut at the end quite big as well. So when I started making my shapes, they came out quite thick and runny also. So it's just a little bit, maybe something to keep an eye out for next time. So there I am, I'm just making hearts, trying out different sizes just to see what works at the end. It's always good to make a few extras in case you change your mind, and then you can decide which one you like later. I also go on to make letters out of mine and my partner's initials. So I'm making an S for myself and a J for my partner, and I've made a giant blob over there, which I thought I might cut into random shapes after it dried, but then I changed my mind, so I didn't end up doing that. But there it is, my giant chocolate blob over there. So I'm just tidying the edges with a toothpick and then putting it into the freezer just so it can set completely. Now my cake layers have cooked, and I'm taking them out of my cake tins. So after taking them out of the cake tin, and when they'd completely cooled down and I'd flipped them over, I actually felt like it was slightly undercooked, so I put it in for another 10 minutes. In this stage we'll be making the icing, so here I have 150 grams of butter, which was left out at room temperature, so it's nice and soft at the moment, and I'm just going to blend that until it's really well whipped. To that I'll be adding 2 cups of icing sugar, and I'll add that in a little bit at a time until it's completely blended, and I'll also be adding a little bit of vanilla essence. I'm also adding about 3 to 4 tablespoons of milk, a little bit at a time, just so it can help bring the whole mixture together. Once the icing is ready at a smooth consistency, I'm going to put it into the fridge to set so it can be nice and firm for when we're coating our cake and layering it together. Now I'm just cutting off the top of both of the layers of the cake just so I can have an even and smooth surface so that we can begin the next step, which will be assembling the whole cake and putting everything together. So now we're on to the final stages of making this cake. First of all, I'm going to take one layer of the chocolate cake and put a little bit of icing on top. I'm going to spread that out evenly and then put the second layer of cake on top. Now that the second layer of the cake has been put on top, I'm going to cover this whole thing with a thin layer of icing just so it can catch all the crumbs for when we begin our decorating. Once I'm done with this crumb coat, I'll be putting this whole cake into the fridge so it can set while I begin to make the different shades that I'll be using to decorate the cake. Over here I've got my white icing separated into 4 bowls. One will stay white and the other 3 will have different shades of pink in it. So just add a different amount of pink into each until you're happy with the different shades that you've got. Over here I've just dipped a butter knife into some hot water and I'm using it to smooth out the first layer of icing that I'd put on, and this is just so I can have an even surface to work with when I begin the decorating. Once the shades are ready, I'm just going to be putting them all into different Ziploc bags again. Now for the decorating, all I'm doing is I'm getting my darkest shade of pink and I'm making little round circles going all the way down the cake, and then I'm getting the back of a spoon and I'm dragging each of the circles out from halfway into the circle to about ½ centimeter out, just so it looks like a petal, and then I'm wiping the spoon after I've dragged out each of the circles. I'm just going to continuously repeat that procedure with all the different shades going from dark to light until I've gone all around the cake. Once that's done, I'm going to put the cake into the fridge so the icing can set again. And with all the remaining icing, I'm just going to get a new Ziploc bag, put some white in it, put the darkest shade of pink on top, put another layer with the second shade of pink, and then a final layer with the lightest shade of pink. And I'm just going to press that together slightly so that when I begin decorating the top of the cake, we don't have to continuously switch using different bags. We can just use the one bag producing the different blends of pinks and white. I have a little bit of white left over, so I've decided to make a spiral in the middle of the cake. This is also going to be useful for when we put our chocolate decorations in the middle, so it won't be ruining the petal designs that we'll be making. So once that's done, I'm just going to take the new Ziploc bag that we've arranged with the different shades of pink and white, and I'm just going to be making petals going around the cake in the same way that we did earlier. Once we've finished decorating the top of the cake, I'm going to remove the baking paper from the bottom, and then I'm going to use the icing to make little round circles going around the border of the bottom of the cake, just to cover up any areas that have been missed. Once we've finished making the border at the bottom of the cake, I'm going to use the leftover white icing to make a border on the top of the cake, just to cover up any imperfections that may be there between the petals at the top of the cake and the petals going around the cake. So to finally complete this cake, I've taken the chocolate decorations out of the fridge and I'm arranging the S and the J initials in the middle of the white icing first, and then I'll be arranging the chocolate hearts behind it. And that completes our ultimate Valentine's Day cake. Now, if you're taking this cake out somewhere for Valentine's Day, just like I did, I took it to Western Springs, you should consider something like heat, because I didn't consider how hot it would be on the day, and by the time we actually got to Western Springs, the top of the chocolate heart had actually melted. But given that, it still tasted great and I had such an amazing time making it, so I really hope you enjoyed watching this recipe and I hope it turns out great for you too. Thanks for watching!